Before we start, I also have a Patreon now. If you have money to toss at me, the link is in the description. Prices and tiers are the same as the YouTube memberships. You can support for as low as $3 and get some goodies as well as my eternal gratitude. Hello, Arknights' most hated YouTuber here. Once again, having to script a video like 3 times, because while I criticize Arknights' writing, I too have the literary skills of an average elementary schooler. Roguelikes. They're pretty f***ing cool. Games like Risk of Rain 2 and Dead Cells truly encapsulate the Sisyphus experience. The genre is much like an abusive relationship. You suffer and you get beaten, but you always come back. But what is it that makes a roguelike good? For example, why is Hades so good while Isaac is so trash? One could say it's because Hades has hot gay men in it, but there's other reasons too. With my degree in nothing, I identified 3 core tenets that make roguelikes, or a roguelike mode in a gacha game, good. They are RNG and player agency, gameplay variety, and the side modes, but this one is optional. Today I will examine 2 roguelike modes in 2 different gacha games, and why one succeeds while the other fails. They are Simulated Universe from Honkai Star Rail and the disaster that challenges my belief in God, that is Integrated Strategies 3. Keep in mind, this is only about IS-3. IS-1 was decent, IS-2 was great, and IS-4 isn't in the English server yet, but it looks great too. Especially because they removed the f***ing die. Don't worry, we'll get to that. First, I'll explain the modes just in case some of you don't play them. In a Simulated Universe, you pick 4 characters and a path. Choosing a path increases the chances of blessings of that path to appear. Blessings are the random buffs you get that make your team better. Each path, and thusly each set of blessings, is catered toward different builds and different characters that you can roll in the Ruthless Mistress that is the gacha. For example, Preservation works great with Gepard, while Elation is complete f***ing trash unless you have Jinyuan. There is also Curios, which are your more classic roguelike items. They affect the run in more major and unique ways. The objective is to go through 13 spaces, which can be combat or occurrences of various kinds, to fight a boss at the end. In Integrated Strategies 3, you don't just collect items to buff your team, you collect your team. You start with 3 vouchers for different classes, either randomized or from a set, to pick 3 operators using Hope to purchase them. Keep in mind, you need to purchase them again to have them at full power. After that, you pick a squad, which is like the paths in SU. You go through 5 or 6 floors with a bunch of nodes you can choose from to collect randomized items, like this war crime over here, or the dodge items that are completely worthless unless you have Flametail. By completing combat nodes, you get XP to get more Nakidoku Maedas and purchase more operators through randomized vouchers. And that's the gameplay loop until you get your ass beat by the end boss. Both modes have a permanent upgrade tree, and each have 2 side modes, but we'll talk about those later. RNG is the entire point of a roguelike, duh. but there is right and wrong ways to do it. The RNG should be complementary to the gameplay, it shouldn't be the gameplay. If I wanted that, I'd go to the casino with my abusive father. For example, Risk of Rain 2 has a million different viable strategies that are really creative, and some don't even involve RNG. Hades has 24 different weapons and a bunch of keepsakes, and Dead Cells has a snowman costume. I don't know, ask my boyfriend, he plays that game, not me. In short, the RNG should matter, but not remove player agency. You should never be at the mercy of the RNG. You should be able to start a run and be safely sure you can clear it if you adapt correctly to the RNG, play well, and make the right choices. Simulated Universe achieves this. What blessings and curios and spaces you get really matters, but your agency is never removed from you. In SU, you can always adapt to it if you make the right choices and are a good enough player. You'll see that I have little to say about it, and that's because when you do this right, there is little to mention beside the fact that you did it right. When you do a good job, people won't notice you did anything at all, so just thumbs up. But when you do a bad job, there's much to discuss. Case in point, IS3. Whenever you end a floor, there is this stupid f***ing die. Let's talk about it. First, I need to establish in this mode there is a thing called cognitive symbols. Depending on the die roll, they can give your team buffs, nothing, or debuffs. But completely forget they can give buffs, because at any difficulty that matters, they literally can't. What this translates to is that at the end of the floor, the game can just decide to f*** you over and twist your dick for no reason, because you rolled poorly. Imagine you're playing Risk of Rain 2, you go through the teleporter, and then the game says, "Whoops, bad roll, we have your stats. Eat shit, asshole, fall off your horse." That's what happens in IS3. This completely removes player agency. At the end of a floor, you're at the mercy of the die, that can decide to give your main operator a completely crippling debuff for no fault of your own. This can and will end your run. Yes, there is some nuance to this. Some debuffs don't do anything on some operators, and Concentration Disorder is a buff on Myrtle. But that's not the point. The point is that you remove the player agency. But it doesn't stop there. At the end of floors 2 and 4, you're guaranteed an item. You get to choose from 2 or more options. But once you do, guess what? The f***ing die is here again. When you roll 1, the game tickles your balls and re-rolls the item you chose into another randomized one. If you roll 6, you get the item you chose plus a random item. You may say this is fair because there is a critical failure and a critical success. But that's not really true. The two don't balance each other out. For the critical success to matter, you need to get lucky. Most of the time, you'll roll a completely non-consequential item that doesn't impact anything at all. This means that the critical failure will most likely be terrible for you, while the critical success will most likely be non-consequential. Yes, there is nuance to this. Sometimes you want a 1 to reroll shitty items, but again, that's not the point. The issue isn't that you're taking away my items, the issue is that you're removing player agency. And yes, there is ways to mitigate the die RNG, but they're too little too late. Like, for f***'s sake, you can reroll one time in the entire run. There is a third example to mention, but for that we need to establish two things. One, at the end of each stage, there is a random chance one of three elusive enemies will spawn. One of them is the Gopnik bear. Beside being a real hottie, he is really slow, but has a more billion HP and a ton of damage. 2. The second ending requires you to recruit and protect an NPC named Last Night. If he dies, the ending to run ends. He is always in front of the blue box you have to protect, or on the way there. Now, let's put these two facts together, and it means if the Gopnik spawns too soon while you do an ending to run, the run is dead, through no fault of your own. It's absurd to me that Gopnik spawns aren't disabled during ending to runs. You just have to pray he doesn't spawn earlier, otherwise he just waltzes in and tears the Last Night a new asshole, because that early you don't have the firepower to kill him. IS3 has way too many systems that remove agency from the player, making the mode feel unfair at times. I get the idea. The setting is ruthless and cruel and unfair, and by losing due to dumb luck, that reflects how cruel the world of IS3 is. Which is very kino, lowlight, but you're making a video game, and that's not fun to play. This is also the bread and butter of a roguelike, and what the RNG is supposed to achieve. Since shit is randomized and then tossed at you, you have to adapt, and vastly every run is different. I will admit, simulated universe's blessings don't achieve this very well, or at all. Where the gameplay variety comes from is in the team you pick and the path, and there it succeeds with flying colors. Each path has a very different playstyle, and the best part is that they are all viable if you have the right characters. Nihility is focused on DOT, preservation on shields, destruction on destroying yourself like a mentally ill 25-ish-year-old on Discord, propagation on Daniel Hill, and so on. It's a bit like Hades. The gameplay variety doesn't come from the actual RNG in the stages per se, but rather from what you can pick before the run. To no surprise, IS3 fails at this too. Both what you can select before the run and what happens in it matter little. You can argue that yes, there is plenty of squads akin to the paths in SU to change up the gameplay, and you can select different sets of vouchers or randomized vouchers, and that is true. The issue is that this changes up the early game only, up to floor 3 at most. During the run itself, you get funneled into the same run every time. The point of vouchers is to encourage using different operators, but ironically, you can do the exact same thing every run with really minor variations. I know for a fact the vast majority of you watching just picks Texalter as soon as they can and cheeses the mode like that. Items also do little. There is no interesting combos and synergies. Each item ends at itself. There is no wider implications to think about, and they are really basic and boring. They are simple stat increases for the vast majority of them. There is 3 cool items, which are the coin-operated toy, Chivalric Commandments New Edition, and Fatal Bolt's Divine Speed, which are also just stat increases, but at least it's a fun one. The people who like to criticize Hades by saying every run is the same clearly have never played IS3. As I said, this is optional. You don't need side modes to be a good roguelike. But as I also said, SU and IS3 have 2 side modes each: Swarm Disaster, Planar Infinity, Deep Investigations, and Monthly Squads. Swarm Disaster and Planar Infinity are why I call SU one of the best roguelike modes in gacha games out there. Sure, the base mode is alright, it works, but it's nothing to write home about to your hot gay Portuguese husband. But these two, they're really good. Swarm Disaster is a permanent side mode, which takes the good base mode and massively expands on it. There's a map now, there's a whole new type of node, the big f***ing insects. A whole new path with new blessings, new curios, new occurrence events, which are like all negative for some reason. You'll enter an occurrence space and they will slap you, take your lunch money and give you HIV. The mode works because it takes the good bits of SU and expands them in ways that don't ruin them. It also massively improved on the gameplay variety. Paths now not only change what happens in combat, but also on the map and how you interact with it. Nihility makes blank spaces, Propagation just skips the whole f***ing thing, Abundance gets to ignore the countdown, and so on. Moving to Arknights, the idea behind Deep Investigations is to have heavy modifiers on the run that make you adapt to them and massively switch up the gameplay experience in massive ways. IS3's Deep Investigations are boring and bland and uninspired. This is live footage of me playing through all 12 of them, which is a real shame because the IS2 Deep Investigations were really great. Each one offered a cool challenge or a cool gimmick that was entertaining to play through. It was like 12 mini game modes to enjoy for a little while. IS3s are divided in 3 sets of 4 Deep Investigations, each set focusing on the cognitive symbol buffs, debuffs, and the hand items. Issue number 1, this is formulaic and bland on the face of it. Issue number 2, they are on Ascension 0, the lowest difficulty, making them mind-numbingly easy, and thusly making me feel like I had a lobotomy by the end of it due to the sheer boredom. Issue number 3, the actual modifiers change way too little, so each Deep Investigation is just a very easy, normal run you have to do 12 times with a really tiny modifier. On the opposite end of the spectrum, we have Planar Infinity. The base concept is the same as Deep Investigations. Here's a modifier, now clear a run with it. The difference is that the modifiers are very significant. Each one completely changes the approach you have to take and how you think about the mode. The final boss rush at the end of each stage is moderately difficult if you want to get the best score, so you can't afford to ignore the modifier either. One time you need to gather as much cash as you can. One time you're guaranteed a really OP one maze space, but otherwise not much else. One time you have a new 4-star upgradable infinite blessings, and so on. You must find a creative way to use the modifier to your own advantage, and when you do, it's really rewarding. Each stage is kind of like a puzzle. This mode works because it keeps the core tenets of the base mode while offering a brand new, fresh and fun experience. Anyway, back to IS3, the monthly squads are meh. They have nothing inherently wrong, but still a massive step down from IS2. In IS2 you got an entire squad of 3 operators for you to start with. You also got a cute new dialogue between those operators at checkpoints during the run. Giving you an entire starting team made you play around with them and try out new operators that often had unique gimmicks. In IS3, you get one operator and you pick the rest. Yeah, less of a monthly squad and more of a monthly dude. This falls into the same trap as deep investigations. Just one operator doesn't change up the gameplay enough. You can ignore them completely and do your own thing past floor 1 sometimes. There's also no new dialogue. It's just a shitty fanfic about how they all died in this parallel universe because Hypergriff is too much of a bitch to kill playable characters in the canon verse. And that's all I wanted to say, I think. Max out your Gummy, or your Pela. Bye. Hey, thanks for watching all of you, and thanks to the channel members on screen right now. In particular, Noobpo, Capybara, Lord Takeo, IQ, is fake, Come to Brazil, and Chromechan but JJF. You people are very cool, even those that don't get mentioned by name.
One after the other, over and over again, I was a new pen.